Today I will be talking about BLANGDMIRE,
Hey, yo, what up?
the resident edgy deck of DZ02 Illusionless Strife. BLANGDMIRE is a deck that focuses on amassing soul, mostly just for its own skill, where, on attack, you bind 4 cards from your soul face down to force your opponent to bind 2 of their rear guards face down, their choice, and then he gets 5,000 power for every 2 cards that you have bound face down. You then draw a card, and with his divine skill, so long as you have 8 or more face down bound cards, give himself an extra critical, restrict your opponent from ever using perfect guards for the rest of the turn, which includes playing Elementaria, and your opponent and their Vanguard lose all their effects until the end of their next turn, meaning even if they do survive, they don't get their Vanguard's effects the next turn. This is remedied so long as they can Persona Ride or ride a new grade 3, but altogether, this deck is quite strong. I recruited my friend Dan to help me record a game, and here's his list. Plenty of his rear guards help assisting in setting up soul, and also cards face down and bound, but beyond that, mostly just supply helpful effects for BLANGDMIRE and the rest of his rear guards. For my deck, I'm playing Phantom Blaster Overlord. It is a deck that is definitely getting outclassed, but it still has some moves. It, on attack, can retire 2 of my own rear guards to call Blast of Dark from soul or drop, and then give the both of them 10,000 power so long as the opponent is at grade 3 or greater. He gets an extra critical so long as Phantom Blaster Dragon is in soul, so for that I use a couple cards that can help set that up. Cleona is also a key part of this deck. She counts as 2 sacrifices, and when retired, so long as the opponent is at grade 3 or greater, I can give Blast of Dark the ability to do drive checks on rear guard, so long as he discards a card first. I then combo this with Blast of Dark, who, when rode or placed on rear, can counterblast 1 and retire 1 of my own rear guards, to then retire an opponent's rear guard and give an extra drive check. This also gets around BLANGDMIRE forcing me to bind my own rear guards, because Cleona forces Blast of Dark to retire at the end of the battle where he used his effect. Finally, I also splash in a single copy of Reze. With this skill, when attacking, you can counterblast 1 and call up to 2 rear guards from your drop zone to rear guard, though their combined grades need to equal up to or less than the number of damage you have. Not only that, but with his divine skill, I can soul blast 1 and return all the criticals from my drop zone back to the deck and give himself an extra drive. On top of that, for the rest of the game you can't ride anything other than Rezael, but when you take your 6 damage and it's not a heal trigger, you get to remove a damage, meaning he's a pretty good tech card for any Keter deck, as once you run out of steam for your main plays, he's just a couple turns worth of plays all on his own. Even if you don't have the means to survive the next turn, you might just survive and get a miracle heal from any trigger you get. To make use of his effect calling rear guards and recurring their effects, I'm using plenty of rear guards with on-call effects, like Easerod Angel, who can help me stack my deck, Drilling Angel, who is also there to set up PBD and Soul, but also hopefully fill out my field a bit, or Maple, because, I don't know, she's happy to be here, I guess. And if either of these decks, or any of the other edgy decks that Vanguard has to offer, interest you, then I humbly request that you check out the channel sponsor, Ronin Cards. It is a fine store for fine cards that you can use to support me and my channel. Find it using the link in the description, and use code SHARE for 5% off your order. Doing this helps support me, so if you like my content, please give it a try. Starting things off, Dan rides and passes his turn. Onto my turn, not much else happens. I don't have any effects yet, but I just attack and try my best. Dan's turn again, he's using Hollow Raptor's effect. When rode upon, checking top 3 for all grade 1 or higher cards to put into soul. If you put 2 or more, he draws a card. The rest go on the bottom of the deck, and there's not much else to do but just attack. I'm also not lying when I say this ride line just makes me really want to play Faverneel again. Not only is it super cool demons, but it's also just really great soul setup. By using Javelin's skill when rode upon to call the top card of my deck to rear as rest. It's usually a trigger, and this is no different. Dark's effect then activates, counterblasting 1 and retiring a rear guard to give himself an extra drive check. On top of that, I'm also using Spiral Cutie Angel's skill, soul blasting 1 and putting her on the bottom of the deck to draw a card. Twin Drive ends up being pretty useful. I get a heal, but that's just about it. Dan loses a Persona Ride and then starts his turn. Riding BLANGDMIRE and then using Vacant Fang's effect. Once again checking the top 3 cards and putting all grade 1 or greater into soul, and then drawing a card if 2 or more were put. He then activates Bracing Angel Ladder, using its effect to give his Vanguard 5k for the turn, draw a card, put it into soul, and then preventing me from touching any of his rear guards for my next turn. Next he'll be calling Zamu, and counterblast 1 to check top 3, put all grade 1 or greater into soul, and because Colossus was put into soul, he's able to use its effect, immediately binding it and drawing a card. He then also calls Valcretia, who, when attacking a grade 3, can put a card from drop into soul and get 5k for every grade of the card put. BLANGDMIRE attacks, binding 4 cards from soul face down, and getting 10k. I left my rear guards open because I just don't want to lose anything yet. Annoyingly though, Dan loses his damage, though at least his second check doesn't get him anything. Zmoog is then attacking, giving himself an extra critical, which I will be guarding. On to my turn, I ride Phantom Blaster Overlord, and forget to charge 3 energy. I should be at 9 by now because I went second, but then I call Drilling Angel and using its skill, putting Phantom Blaster Dragon into soul, giving my Vanguard an extra critical so long as it stays there, and then I'll even get to check top 3 with Drilling Angel skill to hopefully call a Phantom Blaster Dragon to the rear. This doesn't happen though, so I instead go for Ease Rod Angel to check top card, and I'll be keeping it up top. Cleona gets called out, and with that I now have my ideal board. This is where the money is, the non-existent money and all my plays. Phantom Blaster will then be attacking, retiring Cleona as 2 sacrifices to call out Blaster Dark from drop. Blaster Dark now gets the ability to do drive checks on rearguard so long as I discard, and with his own skill on call I counterblast 1 and retire Drilling Angel, sadly not getting to retire anything because Dan played Angel Ladder, but he still gets an extra drive check. Phantom Blaster on his own is attacking for 23k with an extra crit, since when calling Blaster Dark if the opponent is already at grade 3, both get 10k. And Blaster Dark gets 5k because something was retired by a card effect. Blaster Dark then attacks, discarding a card to get Twin Drive, where I'll get nothing. Afterwards, Blaster Dark is retired, and this will help because it's the only one in my deck, and I can't afford to have it get bound. I've been having recurring dreams lately where it's just normal stuff happening, but I have the Fortnite HUD laid over top of it, and I think I'm playing Fortnite. And sometimes, like, there's the cars and stuff from it, but, like, most of the time it's just me, like, running around town. Dan's then using Cage of Furious Star, allowing him to soul charge 1 and then call something from soul to rear. Gets 5k, and Colossus is a pretty good choice. After it attacks, it'll be going to soul to draw a card, and then it'll use its skill where, when put into soul, it can bind itself face down. Anyways, Falcratia put Colossus into soul, then using its effect got bound, and then Falcratia also gets 5k for every grade of the card she put into soul. And actually, speaking of Fortnite, who do you guys think would be great skins in there? Because I keep thinking Leonore or Bavsargra would be fucking amazing. Chrono Jet could get in, which would be pretty cool. Messiah even would be awesome too. He's also using Evoke Alchemist skill, counterblasting 1 to restand a rearguard and giving it 15k. But as to whether or not Vanguard will ever get into Fortnite, I don't know. I don't think any card game has actually gotten into Fortnite yet. I'm then using Heavenly Bright, Energy Blasting 2, and I've realized by now that I should have 9 energy, but with it I get to check the top card of my deck, and either call it to Guardian Circle or keep it on top. If I do call it, it gets 10k shield. I like to call it because with the extra 10, that guards it. Falcratia then attacks, putting another grade 3 into soul to give herself 15k. I don't get a Persona ride, but I do call Emmeline with their skill Soul Blasting 1 to check top 5 for a blaster to call to rear or add to hand. Though if I add to hand, I need to discard. What? Yeah, what about it? Raziel? Yeah. I then call in the main and use her skill to counterblast 1, put a card from hand into soul, and draw 2 cards. I just needed her as an extra body though because I'm calling Cleona, and basically pulling off the exact same combo as last turn. Biggest difference though is that this time with Blaster Dark I'll still be able to counterblast 1 and retire 1 of mine, but this time get to retire an opponent's rearguard. Dan will be guarding for Overtrigger to pass, and also using Tiskar's skill, Energy Blasting 3 to draw a card. I then realize I still have 10 energy, and before it's too late, I draw a card before doing my drive checks. I score a critical trigger, and I'll be putting it on Emily. Since Phantom Blaster and Dark will both be getting Twin Drive, I decided it's best to just put all my trigger effects on the last attack, making it as big as possible. Now though, Blaster Dark scores himself a critical, and I finally get to deal some damage to Dan. Zmoog is then coming out, putting 2 cards from the top of the deck into soul and drawing a card. Bosses and alchemists join the field, and now the gang's all here. BLANGDMIRE then goes in, binding 4, binding my last rearguard, to draw a card, get some power, and also uses Divine Skill, getting a critical and locking me out of perfect guards for the rest of the turn. I am forced to no-guard this, and it doesn't go well, as Dan gets 2 critical triggers, and I'm now looking for a heal trigger. Which I don't get. So because this is kinda short, let's throw in another match. However, I do need to say before we get to it though, a very small percentage of the people watching this video are actually subscribed, which begs the question, what are you even doing here? If you're just here for 1 or 2 matchups, then just subscribe. I might just post the same matchup or the same decks later, who knows? Maybe you're just looking for someone to watch while you eat. Why not subscribe so it's easier to find me when you're looking for someone to watch? Just a suggestion. The next game starts up, Dan doesn't do anything on his first turn, and for my first attack a couple triggers go flying, but nothing really happens from it. On Dan's next turn he only manages to put 1 into soul, meaning he doesn't get an extra draw, and those 2 criticals are stuck on the bottom of the deck until he rides to grade 3. And as much as I would like to guard and hopefully stay safe for a while, I still need a damage for Blast of Dark's effect. Yep. Call, with her skill when placed, Soul Blast 1, check top card, call to rear, skill when placed, Soul Blast 1, check top card. There you get to see a couple of the cards that I'm using to just maximize on-call effects. Kinda amusing that 2 of them were on top of deck, but hey, it works out well. This time, riding to grade 3, Dan gets to put 3 cards into soul. He then shuffles his deck, so those criticals are back into the mix. He then calls a move, checking top 3 and only putting 1 into soul. Though of course 1 is all he needs to put in, cause that'll still get him his draw from Zamoog. Cage of Furious Star then loses Dan another Persona ride, meaning he's down to 1 left somewhere. Swirler gets some power, and he calls up the rest of his boys. For the rest of the turn, a couple triggers go flying, Dan's Twin Drive goes pretty great, and with the 1 defensive trigger I got, I'm able to guard the rest of my attacks. Emmeline then gets called, checking top 5 and calling me a PBD. Drilling Angel then gets called, putting a PBD from drop into soul so that my Vanguard can get an extra critical, though he won't be finding me another rearguard. And then with Cleona I get my full plays, attacking some rearguards, retiring some rearguards, and retiring some more. I once again forget I'm at 9 energy, and before it's too late, Energy Blast 7 to draw 1. Nothing much else happens with the rest of my turn, and Blast of Dark ironically gives me the same Twin Drive as in the last game, so after one more attack, it's over to Dan. A new Zamoog comes out, putting 1 into soul to draw 1. Alchemist also comes out, but he won't be restanding anything cause Dan is short 1 counterblast. The rest of my field gets wiped, and Dan is using his Divine Skill, so an extra critical, can't use Perfect Guards, and I'm also losing out on my Vanguard's effects if I don't ride next turn. The last attack is nothing I can't handle, but at this point onto my turn, I don't have a lot to do, neither defensive nor offensive, so I just decide to fuck it and ride Rezael.
If they were doing this, I would have gave you Leo.
That's alright. And put Liel in PBO that's splashing in Rezael, then that's just too dumb. Divine Skill only returns 1 critical back to the deck, but hopefully Triple Drive and just a potential heal next turn will be enough to save my ass. Izrod then comes down, and the top card of my deck was a Perfect Guard, so I have a way to get around this. With Sia's skill when boosting, so long as I have 4 units, I can Counterblast 1 and Energy Blast 2 to draw a card, so I'm still getting that Perfect Guard for next turn, but it's not interrupting anything. On top of that, she also gets 5k. Dan gets a critical for his defensive trigger, so this annoys the rest of my plays a little bit. With Rezael's skill though, on attack I Counterblast 1 and call Izrod and Drilling Angel. Drilling Angel will put something from drop into Soul, and then Izrod will be Soul Blasting that to check top card. Though honestly though, I kinda wish I never did that. I would have really rather just got that Triple Drive. So, misfortune aside, let's see how that Triple Drive does. It went pretty okay, but Dan already got his defensive triggers, so this is just a 33k attack to a 23k body. 15k still guards it. Despite everything, I'm still guarding pretty well. BLANGDMIRE gets met with a 2 to pass, which succeeds. Dan splits the effects though, giving the power to Zamoog, who will already be getting an extra critical, and then giving the critical to Falcretia, who will already be boosting herself with power. I use my last card in hand, a Perfect Guard, and now I'm just hoping that Rezael can save me with a trigger. So because Falcretia already has an extra critical, I just need any trigger plus a heal. I get the heal, so I just need 1 more trigger, but while miracles do happen, sometimes they're just fucked. If you made it to the end, I thank you for watching. All I have left to say is please check out Ronin cards using the link in the description, remember to use code SHERIFF for 5% off your order, and finally please subscribe.